Hi guys, welcome to this video. Today we're talking all about raw feeding.
We understand that this subject can cause some controversy because everyone wants their best thing for their fur babies and they want to feed the best diet possible. So we are not discriminating between different diets. We feed our cats raw and this is just what we believe to be the most species appropriate.
Our cats have been on a raw diet for over 12 months now, and what we're going to share with you today is our experiences and what we've learned so far.
We are also going to answer some frequently asked questions that we find under our videos with raw recipes. Pixie and Bluebell eat raw diet, so they get that daily 3 times a day, and they also get Cosmo Snackies as a little treat. So this is freeze-dried meat or fish, and then very rarely we get them like little snacks that contain some other fish as well.
I think for us the deciding factor in choosing the raw diet was the fact that if you think of like cats that live in the wild, they obviously hunt the prey and they mainly eat meat only, so wherever they can find in the in the jungle or wherever wherever they live. And if you think about the teeth, they are designed to be able to chew and rip apart the meat that they find. And then obviously the tongue, that's like really rough and designed to be able to scrape off the meat off the bone. So that's just like some of the things that really like make you think of like what is appropriate for a cat, because obviously the cats that we have domesticated in the houses, they come from the big cats that were eventually just living in the wild.
But it kind of makes you think about what they were designed to eat.
Yeah.
And even domesticated cats that are allowed to go outside catch squirrels, birds, rodents. So some eat them, some don't, but that also shows you that this is their actual instinct to hunt. So in addition to us believing that this is the most appropriate diet for our cats, there is other benefits that come with raw feeding, and probably the best one is their poop. So when cats eat raw meat, their poop does not smell. It is dry and doesn't have much smell at all.
There's no smell almost.
Only when you get close to it you can smell it a little bit, because it is obviously poop. But it doesn't smell in the room when you're a little bit further from the litter box. And raw diet also helps to keep your cat's coat shiny. Our cats have no problems with matting and tangling of their fur at all, and we do see Ragdolls, especially like long-haired cats, they get like tangled hair on their bellies at all, and our cats don't get that.
Never.
Completely, no. So raw diet definitely helps to keep their coat shiny.
I just thought of another example of what raw diet is beneficial for, and it's actually the teeth. If your cat is on a raw diet and specifically has like small chunks of meat, not just like ground meat, it helps to clean the teeth and
pieces of bone as well.
And keep them in good and healthy order, because sometimes cats struggle to keep all of the teeth until the later age where they start to lose them, unfortunately.
A very well-known fact is that cats are not big drinkers, so feeding raw diet ensures that they get enough moisture from their food, so even if they don't drink much water, they will not get dehydrated. Something that we would consider a benefit as well is the fact that raw feeding is definitely quite cheap. So it doesn't cost much money, and compared to like big brands or brands of commercial pet food that will have a lot of nutrients, raw feeding will definitely be less expensive. It doesn't take that long to prepare and it doesn't cost much at all.
Yeah.
Now this is not like a proven fact or anything, but we noticed that with our cats, that because they are just so used to eating raw meat, they don't eat any of our human food. They are not interested in it in the slightest. Like, they would smell things, but they wouldn't want to eat it. Even when we gave them some ham, well, not gave them, but like gave them to smell ham, they just weren't interested in it. Even though it was meat, they could probably smell that it wasn't
true.
as good.
One thing that Pixie once attempted to lick or bite was just a crisp.
Yeah.
She just had a moment and she was like, oh,
what is that?
She didn't actually eat it. We obviously didn't let her eat it.
Yeah.
But it was just funny to see.
Yeah, because we do hear about cats stealing food from the plate. And ours definitely don't do that.
Okay, we once saw a video of people feeding a cat a lasagna. How silly do you have to be to feed a cat lasagna? Just putting it out there,
That was
guys.
so bad. Yeah. The cat was so overweight as well.
Yeah.
Which also brings us to another thing. When cats eat raw, they can very well regulate themselves and regulate how much they're eating. So we don't have to pay that much attention to how much food we give them and like portioning it, because they would just eat when they're hungry.
Yeah.
Whereas if you give them kibble, so like dry food, or like artificially flavored wet food, they might just get used to it, and it's almost like fast food for people. So they just get a little bit addicted to it, and they would just eat and eat and eat and never feel full. Whereas with raw food, they just eat only when they're hungry. So basically, it's probably impossible to have an overweight cat on a raw diet.
Now, with the raw diet, and specifically raw recipes, there's a couple things that you need to remember and go by. So first of all is the correct ratio of meat and everything. So you need to make sure that if you're ever going to prepare a recipe for your cat, you need to put 80% of the muscle meat, 10% of bone, and 10% of organs. Second of all is the taurine content. So when you're choosing meat, it's very important to check that the meat contains enough taurine. Best way to do that, quick Google search, and that should show you what kind of meat contains how much taurine.
So the studies suggest that you should have about 10 milligrams of taurine per kilogram of cat's weight per day. But as long as you go over that and choose meats that have actually high taurine content, you'll be absolutely fine. So the best ones to use are chicken thighs if you are preparing a chicken batch, and we do also use pork loin, which also is high in taurine. Chicken hearts are also a great choice, but they shouldn't be a base of your recipe, and probably have like a third or up to a half of their muscle content. So actually hearts are not an organ, they are a muscle meat.
Yeah.
But we'll also link a source down below which has tables with all different meat kinds, and it shows you actually taurine content in them. So you can have a look through that and see what meats are best to use for you and for your cat. Just one additional note on choosing the meats as well is that it shouldn't be lean meat. So you can use mince, you can use pieces, but chicken breast, for example, is not the best choice because cats actually do need fat. So all of like those steaks with a little bit of fat on the side are really good for cats actually.
Yeah, so it probably works out a little bit cheaper as well.
Definitely.
And also, chicken breast doesn't contain much taurine as well.
Yes.
So that's another one to remember.
When it comes to the 10% of organ content, at least 5% should be liver, so half of that content. You can use kidney or any other organs that you can find, or whole 10% can be liver as well. When it comes to the bone content, we actually use bone meal in our recipes, and the calculation with that is a little bit different, but we'll link it down below and show you how to calculate how much bone meal to use per whatever meat you've got. But the best thing to do is actually give your cat whole bone or pieces of bone if they will eat it. So Pixie actually does like bone, she's absolutely fine with it. Sometimes we do give her like a chicken wing or a little chicken, but Bluebell is not interested in it.
He's
He's
not about
avoided.
that.
So rather than him not being able to eat something, we just decided to use bone meal. And another thing that can be substituted is eggshells, which we actually haven't tried it, and one of you guys actually commented on a recent video and asked why don't we use it. And kittens actually shouldn't be fed eggshells because they don't have as many nutrients that they should be getting from the bone. But our cats are adults now, so we can definitely try the eggshells. Probably in our next recipe.
The whole preparing of the recipe for your cat can be very overwhelming to start with, and to be honest, it has been a little bit for us, but with time, as you gain experience and the knowledge, it becomes easier and easier. And even in situations where like we go to a shop and certain meat isn't available and we know that we have to prepare a batch, we already know what things we can substitute for what and how we can adjust the recipe to make it work. So as long as you're going to stick by it and invest this initial time to do your research and prepare everything and study everything, with time you're going to get the knowledge and confidence. So it does get easier, guys.
Yeah, it definitely does. There's just a lot of information, but it's definitely worth to read as much as you can to make sure that you are feeding your cat proper diet and that they get all of the nutrients that they need.
Yeah, I think I confused that a little bit, but you get what I meant. There's also 2 other ingredients that we add to our recipes apart from like meat pieces and bone and what we talked about so far. These are sardines, so we add them for flavor and to make it more appealing to the cats. Also for some healthy fats that are in the actual fish. And the second one is the eggs. Eggs are supposed to make your cat's coat more shiny and more like smooth. So I think we can observe that in Pixie and Bluebell, especially like Mon talked about the like different coats that she saw like on pictures. And I don't know if it's because of the egg or because of the whole diet, but they definitely look a lot shinier and just like smoother. You can actually run your hand. Yeah, but like Bluebell actually allows us to like just rub him on his belly. So when he's like upside down, I can just run my fingers through the coat and they're not gonna get stuck.
No knots or anything.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, the eggs are also supposed to help with fur balls as well. So it's a good idea to use them too.
Yeah. So this brings us to the next section, which is the frequently asked questions. The questions that we get on YouTube or through Instagram. So, first one, how do you transition your cat from a different diet to raw?
So some people believe that you can literally just give your cat raw and just go with it. But probably the most gentle way of doing it is still continuing with the food that you have. So if it is an adult cat or if it's the kitten that you just brought home, just continue with the food that they have been eating before and start adding raw into it. So mix it together. And over time, add more raw and less of their current food and more raw and less of their current food until you just are left with the raw food. So the transitioning period would probably take about 2 weeks. This is what we did with our cats, and that worked perfectly fine. They didn't have any upset stomach issues or anything like that.
Obviously, this will depend on the cat. Some cats you can transition in a week if they're happy to eat raw. Some cats will take a little bit longer. So you just need to remember that cats, again, are individuals and they will take different periods to adjust. Next question is, how much food do you give them daily and how do you spread it out throughout the day?
So we feed our cats 3 times a day, and it's not like spread out evenly really, because they get a little bit in the morning. They're not very morning eaters, so they will get a little bit, then they get more around 5 p.m. and then another portion at the evening. And in terms of kittens, they should eat as much as they can, and they won't. So as soon as their bowl is empty, you can just give them more. They just need this food to grow, be healthy and develop correctly. When it comes to adult cats, the guide is to feed between 3 and 6% of their body weight per day. So this will depend on your cat's activity. If they are just indoor cat, they will probably be at the lower end of that spectrum. And if your cat goes outside and runs around like crazy, they will probably need 6% of their body weight.
I'm sure if you give them a little bit less, they will remind you.
Yes.
Feed me, human!
And going back to portions and portion sizes, that's something that you will definitely find out yourself with your cat, because some cats might want to eat loads in the morning, so it's probably best to just kind of eyeball it and then check how much they've eaten. If they've eaten all of it, maybe try to give them a little bit more. If they haven't eaten all of it, maybe try to give them a little bit of a smaller portion at this time of the day, and you will definitely find out. It can be stressful and you might just think like, oh, what am I doing? But it will definitely come with time.
We did definitely overthink it to start with.
Trying to weigh everything, and you just, no, just give them
they're the best at regulating and like showing you what they want.
Especially with a raw diet.
So now obviously raw diet means raw meat. So what about bacteria?
So we use human grade food. So we buy most of our food in the supermarket. So it's no different to preparing your normal meal if you do eat meat at home. So all of the hygiene procedures are the same. Just wash your hands, make sure that the surfaces are clean, and then clean them afterwards, and you will be absolutely fine. And what we do, we also freeze the meat before it is given to a cat. So the batch is prepared, then goes to the freezer, and it's being defrosted in the fridge. So that way we minimize the risk of bacteria developing. Cat's stomach is also very acidic, so they are very good in processing all of that raw meat, and their digestive system is actually prepared and designed for it, so they will not have any issues with eating raw.
Yeah, and actually about the acidic stomach, we did once have a problem with Pixie where we would leave too much time between the meals in the evening and in the morning, and sometimes when she'd eaten for the first time in the morning, she would vomit, and then she would continue eating and she would be fine. So what we've learned is that you should try as much as you can minimize the length between the meals if your cat vomits, for example, in the morning.
Yeah.
Just something to keep in mind. Next question is actually about defrosting, which we slightly touched on in the previous question. And how long do you leave it out?
So with defrosting, we take it out to the freezer when we have about 1/3 of the current box left in the fridge. Put it in the fridge and let it defrost slowly there. It is in sealed containers, so that's absolutely safe as well. And then when it comes to leaving it out, it can be left for a few hours, so don't worry too much. Just make sure that the bowls are cleaned afterwards, and you always put the meat in clean bowls. So when we leave for work, we always just leave the food out, and sometimes they just start eating it after a couple of hours.
Can you feed your cat when the food is still cold, or should you leave it to warm up to the room temperature?
So I think that depends on the individual cats.
I know what you're going to say.
Because I've heard that you should feed it in room temperature, and that's what we were doing to start with. We would take it out, put it somewhere, and then wait for it to be a little bit warmer before giving it to the cats. But once we had a little bit of a forgetful moment and didn't defrost the meat early enough, and then we put it in the bowls and it was still quite frozen, and they literally jumped on the counter and ate it frozen.
Yeah, we quickly learned that Pixie loves an ice cream. Okay, so next question is, do you change the protein from time to time? So like, do you use different meats?
We do, but this is more just for variety really, just for them to try something different, because we always ensure the correct ratios and correct taurine content as well, make sure that there is fats in the diet. So it's not essential as long as the diet is balanced, but sometimes you just might want to switch it from time to time.
Or if you can't get it in the shop.
Yeah.
Next one, how do you ensure correct taurine content?
So we touched on that previously, and we will leave sources down below. But the most important thing as well, once you have the correct meats, is never leave the water out. So if there is any water in your bowl when preparing the meat, never get rid of it. And the same goes with actual ready batch. So when you've defrosted it and there is water in their box, always put that into the cat's bowl as well, and make sure that they eat that, because that contains more nutrients as well.
Now next one, do you add any supplements?
So we don't add any supplements, as long as you make sure that your diet is balanced and that you feed your cat all of the ingredients that are essential for them. You do not need to add any supplements.
Nice. And where do you buy the meat? So we kind of answered that already. We buy them in a supermarket or sometimes from the butchers.
Yes, and then sometimes we go to like a local animal feed store, so that's got everything for like mouse, for like horses. So they also store lots of frozen foods, so liver and everything like that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
All right, next question. Should I tell my vet that my cat is on a raw diet?
I would say that you should. Just always be honest with your vet so that they can choose a correct treatment for whatever your cat needs. In terms of our vets, we actually found them through Natural Instincts website, which is a brand that makes pre-made raw food for cats and dogs, and our vets actually do sell it at their practice as well. So they're very supportive. They always ask how are they doing with their food as well, and suggest things that go with their diet as well. So they are very supportive. I would say, just always be honest, and if you do have any problems with your vet, you can have a look for one that actually recommends or supports raw feeding as well.
I want to feed a raw diet, but my partner doesn't agree with it.
So we got a few of those, and I would suggest to watch a Netflix documentary called Pet Food. It shows how dry food was actually created, why was it created, and why vets don't agree with it sometimes as well.
Or sometimes why they push it, because they get commission for selling the certain brands and stuff. So they don't get commission for selling raw food often, but there's plenty companies that try to push the dry food of, you know, the brand that they represent.
Yes, so it's definitely a good one to watch. It opens your eyes on the commerciality of pet food as well.
Oh yeah. Okay, so the next one that we also get quite often is, I want to feed raw, but I don't want to use pork.
So we get that one probably because of some religious reasons as well, but of course you don't have to use pork. You can use chicken, you can use any other meat. People in Australia feed kangaroo meat to their cats, so anything, beef, chicken, rabbit.
Maybe not so much.
You have to look at the taurine content and maybe support that with chicken thighs. But yeah, any meat, just make sure that it's got the correct nutrients.
So this brings us to the end of this video, guys. To quickly sum up, the information that we shared with you today is what we gathered over 13 months of our personal experience feeding raw. And to be honest, if you can put up with preparing the raw diet and and storing it, I think those are the biggest cons of like the whole concept. So if you can keep up with that, I recommend it.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely worth to give it a go. We will also link our playlist with all of our previous raw recipes as well at the end of this video, so you can go and watch it and get inspired.
We hope this video was very informative for you today, guys, and by no means are we trying to convince you to switch to raw diet. This is just purely for the information. And as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.